We all know, as web designers, we have to think inside the box.
What?
No, really. Today I'm going to show you the box model of CSS and how you can use it to style your website. When I started with CSS, I was quite confused how to place things on a website. Today I'm going to show you the box model of CSS, because with CSS, literally everything is in its own box. We're going to learn about padding, borders and margins and what's the difference between them. And that you're not as confused as I was, I'm going to give you some special hints and tricks you have to know so that after the video you completely understand how to place and space items with CSS. Because especially the margins have weird rules not a lot of people know about, so even if you know CSS well, I'm sure you will benefit from this video. Okay, so let's start. In CSS, everything is in a box. Every text, every image, every element is a box. This box looks like this. We have the content, maybe an image, a graphic or a text. Then we have the padding. The padding basically is the space from the content to the border. Then we have the border, and after that we have the margin. So what's the difference between those? I always explain it like that. You can see the content as a house. The padding is everything from the house to the fence. The border is the fence, and the margin is the public space between you and your neighbor. So padding is used to give content some space. The border, if used at all, is to visually distance the element, and the margin is the space from one element to the other. And it's important to structure your design that way. Otherwise it can get chaotic if, for example, you use padding instead of margin to space two elements. A key difference between padding is that padding extends the background color, whereas the margin is always transparent. The same with the house. You can control the space from your house to the fence, but you can't control the public space between the houses. I hope this makes sense. A great example of how this works is if we create some cards. These cards are 4 divs we have in our HTML with house emojis. This is our CSS. Up here I did a little reset of margin and padding. This is extremely common. If you don't know why I have this reset, I have a link about that in the description down below. And then the background color of dark blue and a better font, so our tutorial looks nicer. So like in the metaphor before, we use the house as an example. So let's start by giving the house a little green grass. So we set the background color to green. Then let's give it a little space so the kids can play. We do that? Yes, exactly, with padding. Then let's give our houses a little fence, so the neighbor's dog does not sit on our lawn. And then let's space the houses between each other a little bit more with margin. So now we have pretty much our example from before. To turn this into something that looks like it belongs on a website, let's change the colors and let's add a text to the cards. And let's center our text in the middle. And now we can see that it kind of looks like a website. Now the fun part begins, with a lot of weird rules that apply to the CSS box model. And that's the thing that confused me the most. First, let's inspect our elements with F12. We open the developer tools in Chrome and we can inspect the box model in styles. We can see our element has display block automatically. And here we can see our content takes up as much space from left to right as it can. And it's just a little bigger than the biggest element in our case. And this is completely normal for display block. Our text sits in the middle with 10 pixels padding outside of it. The 5 pixel border, great. And we have 10 pixel margin, great. So how much space do we have between two elements? 2 elements times 10 pixels on each side equals 20 pixels. It should be 20 pixels, right? Wrong. Unfortunately, we have display block and we have 2 elements that border each other from top to bottom. Then we have what's called margin collapse. We can see it like this. They don't add up. Whereas if we delete margin and border, the padding does add up. So let's reverse that. So if we give one element a special margin, let's do that quickly here. We can see that the 10 pixels of card 3 does not add up to the margin down here. So with margin collapse, only the biggest margin counts for the spacing. And it gets even better, or worse for that matter, if you use inline block. Here the elements will be spaced out with the added margins, so the margins don't collapse. Great, problem fixed. The space between should be 10 pixels times 2 elements, so 20 pixels, right? I prepared a little box that's exactly 20 pixels and we can see there is space missing. So what's that space? It's a little hard to explain, but it's like space between a word that HTML just automatically does. More info in the description down below. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter too much because we have something that comes to the rescue called display flex. If you don't know what that is, I will have a separate video about that soon, so make sure to subscribe to not miss that. But it's a more modern alternative to the default display block. And now we can see that the elements are spaced out to 20 pixels, no matter if they're next to each other or on top of each other. So if you need precision spacing, use Flexbox. That was my first tip. Let's go to another thing that I didn't get for a long time. Let's add a fixed width and height to our elements. So we have 100 pixels width, 2 times 10 pixels padding, plus 2 times 5 pixels border. We leave the margin out and that should equal 130 pixels, right? So let's check that. Right, it's 130 pixels times 130 pixels. So what happens if we add more padding to our box number 4? The box will get bigger, so we can see it goes from inside out. But usually how we design things is from the outside in. So if you would like to fix the width of the total element instead of the content and then having to calculate, what most developers do is add something that's called box sizing border box. That will make it that if you have the width and or height defined, that the max width or and height of the element is the defined width and height, not included the margin. So we can see now the content has shrunk to 60 pixels and the total element is 100 pixels. That's why a lot of the times you see in the beginning of CSS box sizing border box. Now we can see all the elements have the same size no matter what padding or border they have. Another property that most people don't know about is outline. Outline does not belong to the box model and does not affect the overall size of the element. It's more like a ghost element, you can only see it, but it does not have an effect. To show really what outline is, let's add some buttons. And let's give them some styling. There is a standard outline defined in each browser. You can see it if you use the tab on your keyboard. It's usually blue, but only what we call on focus. We shouldn't really use outline to style our element for accessibility reasons. Let's say somebody's mouse doesn't work or a person can't really use the mouse, and that person would like to use the tab to navigate the page. Well, now the person can't anymore because we used up the outline for our style. But what you can do if you want is style the outline with focus. This will style the outline instead of it being the default blue one. Some developers just set the outline to not show up at all because they don't like the look when you click the button and you have the blue border. But as I said, don't do that for accessibility reasons. So those were some things you have to know. It took me a long time to wrap my head around all of those things, but I hope this made some kind of sense to you. If you have questions, let me know in the comments down below. If that video helped, leave it a like, and if you want to see more videos like that, don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.